Welcome to Daily Confidence for Entrepreneurs. In this episode, you will discover what looks like a tech problem never is, why big picture thinkers get frustrated with tech, the two big mistakes that coaches make that gets them into tech trouble, and you will watch yours truly get exposed and coached by my friend Anke Herrmann. Today, we're talking about taming the tech monster. Welcome, Anke.
Thanks for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Good to see you. So, as usual, if you're watching or listening, please make sure you like and subscribe to the show. If you have any questions, put them in a comment on whichever channel that you're watching, and we'll do our best to get back to you. If you have a friend that has tech problems and they have tech issues, tag them in a post or send them the link to this conversation and share the knowledge with them. And so that's that. Also, I am sharing the step-by-step blueprint through simple retention formula. New lead generation costs 6 to 10 times more than customer retention. So keeping your customers is a lot more profitable, a lot more likely, and a lot more easier. So if you would like to save 6 to 10 times in lead generation, you'd like to generate appointments and referrals out of your existing list and out of your customers, out of people that you already have, type the word retention in the comments below, and we'll send you the link to download the checklist. Now, I'm going to do the introduction to my friend Anke, and we're going to dive into a very interesting conversation about tech. Anke is a business coach, online tech expert, and author of Taming the Tech Monster. She started her entrepreneurial journey in 2004 when she quit her software developer job in the UK, moved to Spain, and started a sewing business. She soon realized that building a business really is a creative process, the same as sewing a dress or developing software, a magical mix of vision, skill, and soul. She now guides coaches through her tornado process to help them deliver successful online programs with confidence. Welcome, Anke.
I'm delighted to be here.
How's your day so far?
Chilled, relaxed. Yep.
Very nice. Where about are you?
I'm in Spain. I'm still in Spain. I moved here in 2004, still here.
Love it. And what's the weather like out there right now?
Now, that is a funny story because it's usually you can kind of trust that this question will get an answer like, oh, it's sunny and blue sky, but now it's actually cloudy. And my parents are on the way, and it's really funny. They're known as the rainmakers. Every time they come, it rains, and they're not disappointing this time. So it's cloudy, drizzly.
Very nice. Very nice. Does it rain a lot in Spain?
Not at all. Like barely ever rains.
Dry,
just only when my parents come. So
interesting. So you should bring them over more often.
Yep.
That's good for the farming industry.
For sure.
They would love it. Maybe you should get them to sponsor your parents once a year.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Hey, if you want rain, just get a couple of tickets for my parents and we can hear some rain for you. Now let's dive into it. Anke, what is your story?
So my story actually starts back in East Germany, like when the wall was up. So that's where I grew up. And I kind of think that it really shaped the way I look at life and business and what I do with my time, because it always felt like, you're sitting in a cage and you can't, like, it's sort of too small to, when you put a big parrot in a small cage, it's too small to spread your wings. But at the same time, it's like the bars were far enough apart so you could see what's on the outside. So there was this restlessness that led me to, find a way to get out before the wall came down. That's a story for another day. But bottom line, I got out and it was literally a one-way ticket. When I got out, it was like, okay, you're out. And there was a sense like, well, okay, you're never going to be allowed back. You leave everything behind. So it was literally a one-way ticket. Little did I know that the wall was going to come down like 10 months later. But recognizing that everything else was just like, oh, okay, no big deal, right? So this sense of, I always compare it to that when there's an opportunity to, obviously I was like, oh, now the big bad world is mine. So when the opportunity came to, move to Australia, off I go. Well, what? Because all I could think was, this is not a one-way ticket. If I don't like it, I can come back, right? So it was like, it felt like there was nothing at stake compared to what I'd done before. And so I was a freshly qualified translator, language teacher. That was my thing. I was a language girl arriving in Sydney thinking, oh my God, multicultural Sydney is going to be heaven for a language girl. And basically I took a few weeks to realize that that wasn't quite the case, that it was very difficult to find a job, that it was probably the worst paid job you could have. So I knew within weeks I wasn't going to last in that industry. So I sent out my resume to anybody who would have it, which is kind of hardly anybody because overseas experience doesn't really count. And I ended up in a software company by accident, right? Somebody knew somebody and I said, oh, you'd be, So I ended up in the software company, and there I was thinking, that was in the mid-90s. So I'm thinking, the future, there is something here, right? That's where the future, that's where things are going. So I'm drawn to it, but at the same time, oh boy, this is like totally overwhelming. There's so much stuff. I don't know where to start. I'm too old to even start. I'm a woman. I'm not really that technical, and do I, like, it was like, that pull, push, hesitant, and it felt like totally overwhelming. I didn't know where to even, get my feet in there, until one day it dawned on me, well, wait, programming language, wait, it's got vocabulary and it's tiny, right? And compared to a natural language, and wait, it's got structure, grammar, just without all the exception. So bottom line, it's like a real language, just simpler. And that was literally the moment everything changed for me, because it didn't mean that I was like a great programmer overnight, but what it took away was that sense I had no access to the field. It was like, I know how to learn languages. I can make this mine, right? So, and I did that, so I basically, and it fairly quickly became apparent that having a background in language and teaching was actually not a hindrance. It was a superpower when you're in software development, because you're then the geek who can actually talk to clients. So very helpful. And there was also the time that I had no baggage. I came in when it was a new programming paradigm. And I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense to me. Whereas older programmers were like, oh, Jesus, this whole rethinking was a lot more difficult. So it was like, I was in my element. Loved it for many, many years, moved to London with it, and, worked on lots of different projects, lots in banking, lots in, I worked on a project on a Sydney casino, and always workflow, always process related, always trying to build a tool that make people's work easier and that take out the monotonous, mechanic, repetitive, boring tasks out, so that they can focus on the creative part and on the essence of what their work's actually all about. Right. Nice. And so that's basically kind of what I do now. Right. Good. So, yeah.
Good stuff. So what do you do now, and who do you serve?
Well, I'm basically doing kind of that, right? To help. The only difference is the people I work with now are mostly coaches. Like there's some, like therapists, they're always passion driven people with a message to share. They might have written a book, they might have developed a methodology that they want to get out into bigger audience, make more impact. And okay, I want to have an online program, like literally use the online world to get their message out. But then when it comes to, okay, how do I make that happen? There is this like, where do I start? It's usually a good question. That's usually where they're stuck. So they don't know that field of the online tech tools that are available and how all that works. They don't know now about that to bring their vision to make it happen, right? They get stuck in, and that's the thing. There's like two different ways you can get stuck there, but that's basically it. I guide them through that process from having a lovely idea to actually having a functioning online business.
Love it. Let's go over And before we go to the next question, tech is a big problem with a lot of people, with actually most people. Most people, even if they're tech savvy, they need tech help. Like tech is an essential part of business. Like I'm pretty tech savvy myself, but can I do everything on my own? Absolutely not. Even if I tried it, I would fail miserably. So all businesses, not some of them, all businesses need tech help if they want to grow and scale, if they want to do run a business like a business, not like a hobby. Even if you run a hobby, I mean, you still need tech. So let's talk about some of the maybe top 2 or 3 big mistakes that coaches make that gets them into trouble about tech and the rest of it.
Yeah, there's really two big mistakes that people make from like, they're basically, it sort of comes together, but you can mess it up from this angle or from that angle. So basically people either fall into the category where they overcomplicate tech, right? And that's usually, so in my experience, the way and that's the thing, it's the way something gets created is always the same, right? You start out with an idea and then you start building it, and it isn't a linear process, and it isn't, and in software development, and even when you make a dress, right? I had a sewing business when I started, right? So it's like, it's very much the same process. You have an idea and you say, well, okay, let me see whether I'm onto something here. Let me see whether there's even something to that idea. So I need to validate that, and I want to build something that is as, the least amount of effort to create something that I can put in front of people to get that feedback, whether people will actually buy this thing or not, before I go and build out this huge complicated system, right? So most of the time when people have, and that's not necessarily when they're new in business, but when they have an idea for a new offer, there's like, oh, I want to run a workshop, I want to do this program. Oh, landing pages, funnels, this, that, boom, boom, boom. And next thing they know, they overwhelm themselves with all these different tech things. And in the end, they get stuck here, they get overwhelmed there, and it all sort of fizzles out, and that idea never sees the light of the day, because they think that they need all this stuff in order to make those first sales, right? In my experience, that's not how it works. Like, you want to validate, and while you're validating your idea, meaning you make the first few sales, that's really the cutoff, right? Okay, can you sell this thing? You want to literally keep it as simple as you possibly can. I'm not saying you shouldn't use tech, but don't go and now implement a whole lot of new stuff. Use what you have. And if you don't have anything, well, then, you need somewhere to deliver the thing. You need somehow to collect payment, and you need somehow to connect with people who might want to buy it. So on one end, that's your phone call or your Zoom call. Hey, I've got this thing. Send me a bank transfer. Here's a Zoom link, or here's a Google Drive. Like, you keep that as simple as possible. If you think you need a lot of tech to make those first sales, you're just going to get yourself into a lot of trouble. And that's a lot of people are in that space, right? When they kind of try, and actually somebody said it recently really, really nicely. It says most people try and build a widget factory before they've ever sold a widget. That is probably mistake number one that a lot of people make.
So the first one is overcomplicate the tech.
Yes.
And what is the second one?
Well, the second one is kind of the flip side of that, right? It's basically oversimplifying things, because so now if you look at that process, you start out, you have this idea. The first objective is like, let's sell the thing. Let's just see whether this is even a product, whether this is even something, whether we've got something. Now, the next step then is where people trip up and then in the other direction. And I've had a client come and she goes, oh, I've got this program and I've run it a few times. People love it. And I'm like, oh, why don't you offer more of it? And she goes, oh, just the thought of all what, when somebody signs up and then I have to send them this link, and then I have to pay, and then I have to do this, and I have to put them on the spreadsheet. I'm like, what on earth? Well, yeah, that same extreme simplicity that helps you get the thing off the ground initially isn't what's going to make it possible for you to serve more people, because now when you have sold a widget, you can't intend to serve bigger numbers of people with that same spreadsheet that was okay when you had a group of 5. So when people try and, oh yeah, well, I'll just keep it simple. And there's an Einstein quote that I love, and he says, like, make everything as simple as possible, but not simpler, right? If you try and serve a bit larger group of people with that same spreadsheet and that little dodgy PayPal link that worked initially, you cause yourself so much work, right? And it's a lousy experience for your clients, right?
Yeah.
So you're probably not going to get a lot of great testimonials, and it's time consuming and it's error prone. Like if you have to, every time somebody signs up, you have to do a lot of manual stuff, things fall through the cracks, things get wrong, people get the wrong stuff, people can't, and it's just a nightmare experience for everyone. And literally that person, she was like, I don't even want to offer the thing that people asked her to deliver, right? So that's the other way, when you start to oversimplify, when you're really ready to build your widget factory.
Got it. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like you can't, there was also the saying that says what got you here won't get you there. Right.
Absolutely.
So like to your point, like if you started with a spreadsheet and you just pulled it off and you did what we call an MVP, or a minimum viable product, to prove that this idea is going to work, you're going to need to I guess improve that and get better systems and processes in place to make sure that you can keep up with the business and actually have an actual business in place, not an idea.
Absolutely.
On a spreadsheet. Right. So we talked about the idea that what looks like a tech problem never is. What is that, and what do you mean by that?
Yeah, I know people always get like, what, but I get error message. That's a real tech problem, right? Yeah, no, I think there's two parts to that. Like one thing is that what I see most of the time is that when things feel hard and when tech causes trouble, people are skipping steps, right? And nobody skips steps on purpose. Usually people skip steps because they don't know the steps are there and what the steps are. So most of the time, and tech is usually it's the space where the problem becomes visible, where it starts hurting, where you can really see, like, this is a mess, right? Now, like a website, for example, is a classic example. Online courses work as well. So somebody would come like, oh, I'm struggling with my website. It's really awful. I don't know, this is the text all too much. So people come in because they feel they have a tech problem around their website. Now, I've not ever come across somebody where I go, okay, I come to your website. First thing, what do I see? What do you do? Like, what does it say?
Are you asking me that question?
No. I'm saying, like, that's what the reaction is from people, right? There is literally what happens, what causes the problem, what causes the overwhelm isn't the tool. What causes the problem is that people overwhelm themselves because there's actually 4 parts to it that they don't see. One is the content. Most of the time, people aren't even clear on that, right? I put together a little mini course. Yeah, people like, well, this and that, and they talk about themselves, and they're not really quite sure, So when you actually ask them, like, okay, what is it that you do? Who do you do it for? What problem do you solve? Like, snappy, like, don't ramble, like, give it to me clear. People kind of like freeze up. Like, it's amazing how often 100%. That happens, right?
Oh yeah.
So that's there's the content to worry about. Then there's the looks of it. Like, okay, what's the colors and how to, what's your what's the look, the colors, the fonts, what do you want this to look like? So that's the whole design part of it. Then there's like, okay, what tools? I don't know where the save button is. I don't know how the tool works, right? And even when somebody knows all these, the part that most people struggle with is, what's the sequence of steps? What do I need to do first? And how do all these pieces fit together? That's the stuff that usually trips up people who actually are tech savvy and know how to use the tool. But there's still like, okay, to put this together, or like an online program or even a website or something, there's a bunch of steps, there's a lot of pieces, and the sequence matters quite often. Like if you get that wrong, you triple the work you've got, right? So when and then people dive into the detail, that dance between high level overview and direction and all the way down to the nitty-gritty detail and not get lost in the jungle and not lose track of where you are. That's the area where most people struggle, and that's got nothing to do with tech, right? And the other part of it is how do you react? Because what's a tech problem? It's an error. It's something didn't quite go as you thought it would, right? And I work a lot on screen share with people, and I've seen panic attacks coming up. You can see it. Shoulders go up, tension. People go, oh my God, there's an error message. And you can literally see it. It's like, oh God, this stuff will never work for me. I'm just too stupid for that. And, my whoever who said I was dumb was right after all when I was 5. You can really see that whole program running in their minds, right? I'm looking at the same error message and I'm going, oh, that's interesting. Didn't quite expect that. Let's see what that is. To me, it's an invitation to problem solve, right? So where somebody else, it's the confirmation that they're never going to amount to anything, right? So it depends on where you take that. Even if there is an error message, it's still not a tech problem.
Love it. Love it. So talk about 4 things for websites. And as a guy who did develop websites for people with our agency years ago, and we did quite a bit of it, there are 4 things you talk about. One is content, and that's like almost the biggest problem for web developers is content, as the customers either don't have it or they don't know what to do with it. So that's a big problem. And then the looks of it, the colors, and what you want it to look like. Most of the time, people haven't thought about that. The tools that you want on the site. And one thing that is critical, you mentioned, is the sequence of steps. Like, what do you want people to do on your site? What is that going to look like? Like, you have to sit down and design this, like draw it out step by step. Here's the first click. Here's the first video. Then there's going to be an email. Then there's going to be this. Then there's going to be that. That needs to be designed so that you could have it. And then once it's designed, in my experience, it has to be improved and optimized. And it's not a one-time shot usually. Like, people think like, oh yeah, somebody built me a website, I'm going to become Bill Gates. Probably not.
Yep. That's exactly what I mean with the tornado thing. Because if you look what a tornado looks like, well, that's what the process looks like. It isn't a straight line, right? And I think that's also something where people get themselves into trouble because you find their expectations are often kind of manipulated a little bit by marketing messages. Oh, 3-click website builder, no experience required, right? So people sign up for this stuff and then they go, oh, well, I don't know. It doesn't feel as simple as it was made out to be. And then the conclusion is, I must be stupid. When it's really like, well, actually, the part they didn't tell you is, there's more to that. You might not need to code, but you still need to know how to structure your website, how the bits fit together, what it is that, how do you translate your big picture vision into the actual pages and functionality on your website. And that part is where the heart of the whole matter is, and nobody talks about it. So, but that's what I mean. And that tornado process is literally that one iteration at a time. One experiment at a time, and it isn't like, oh, I just do the website and then that's it, right?
So does tornado stand for something? Is that like an abbreviation?
No, that's just an image, so that you get an idea of what the process looks like. Because it's also, I used to say for a long time that it's like a spiral, and I remember there's a lovely lady called Dr. Amy Simpkins. She used to be a rocket scientist, and she got bored with that, right? So she started her own thing. She wrote a book about the spiral of innovation, right? So I often software development is a very iterative process, and I've got to see how well that works, but I found, well, the spiral doesn't quite express it right, because it isn't as nice and steady as the spiral looks like. Sometimes you'll feel like you're in a tumble dryer, and sometimes it feels a bit stagnant and it goes a little left, a little right. But the actual iterative process with a good dosage of crazy, that's pretty much what it looks like in real life.
Love it. So speaking of getting in trouble and I guess getting lost and getting stuck into a tornado, why do big picture thinkers get stuck and frustrated with tech and everything around it?
Yeah, I think you've already touched on it, right? It's that that level, because say big picture thinkers, and most of my clients are in that space, right? And I've got a lot of that, so we kind of really connect in the excitement and enthusiasm of the possibilities of the vision, right? So that's their thing. That's where they live. That's how their brain works. That's how they operate. Now, to actually make that happen, it requires you to operate on that level of detail just underneath. And we're not talking button hex colors. Like, this is just that basic structure. What are the steps? What are the elements? What are, that level of detail? I can see it when a visionary is like, okay, I've just downloaded my idea, we've got it, and now their eyes glaze over. Like, when you come to this, like, okay, what you just said before, okay, somebody comes to the website. What do you want to happen next? Which video they should see? That? And it's not technical, but your big picture person goes, oh, I don't. They don't want to go there. Like, their mind just thought that just bores the life out of them. Right? But it needs to be done. And if they try and skip that process and just, oh, I just get a virtual assistant to do it for me, well, then you just miss that big part. And that's the heart of it. That's why they're getting themselves into trouble.
I have similar experience with that. That is my experience with big picture thinking is like, you say something that is like 3 words and it takes a second to say it. Like, can we build an e-commerce site that sells $1 million a month? Yes. It just took you a second to say it, but that's about 2 years of work. And there is a lot of work involved. And people are like, can we get it to do this? We're like, yeah. And then it takes 6 months. They're like, oh, I thought it would be easy. We're like, yeah, I thought too, but it's not.
But that's the thing. Like, the funniest thing I've ever had in that respect, it was a neighbor where I lived in Granada, and he came and he says, "Oh, I was wondering whether you could do like a real simple project for me, And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he goes, "Well, you know what? I wanna move to Senegal, and I thought, well, to kind of support myself, I wanna sell like handmade leather masks." And I just want to put, I just need a really simple website and put some picture on it and sell these leather masks. And like, I'm hearing e-commerce, leather, that's natural material, customs, payment, international, African countries, who knows what, like, for me, this was like, oh my God, like, basically what you're asking for. And on top of it, I don't want to have to deal with the thing. I just want to be able to send you the photos and then I just get the money, right? I'm like, well, you're actually looking for artificial intelligence and that's not available at your budget, right?
Your simple idea is a $30 million project.
Yep. But I think that's what happens when people don't. That's what I often say to my clients. Like, I don't want to turn anybody into a programmer, because like, if you wanted to be a programmer, you'd be one by now, right? So what I want for people is to know enough to be a good client for someone. Like, don't be that client. Like, don't be the person who asks for like a spaceship project and come then, and then on top of it, come with the budget for,
For sure. Yeah, people. Here's my word of caution. Don't get fooled by some advertising that you see out there. What? 1-click website e-commerce, 7-figure, ready in an hour. Click here to buy now with $99.99. Like, dude, it's a tad more complicated than that. Like, don't fool yourself. Sometimes if it's too good to be, I mean, there's some great softwares and automation and stuff out there, but sometimes if it is too good to be true, it is probably too good to be true. Like, think about it.
Yeah, totally. And I think in my experience, what often happens that people who are new in business fall for these, right? Because they kind of come out of the corporate world and they're still sort of a little bit like shell-shocked by the idea of, oh, everything's uncertain now, and everything that felt like, oh, this is going to be so cruisy, I'm going to be my own boss and I'm going to have my own time and blah blah blah, and all of a sudden they realize, oh Jesus, everything's uncertain, like nobody, and there's this sense of like, I'm floating, and somebody throws you a lifeline and say, oh look, this can be really easy, tech's really easy. And I've seen people sign up for stuff that sounded like this, and I'm like, ooh, this is cringeworthy, and people jump at it because it promises to solve all their problems. But as you say, it's like, it's not And you're always unpopular when you say, well, look, this is more complex than it sounds, but I think it actually is hopeful, because what people find when they sign up for stuff like that and then find, well, Jesus, this is more complex, this is nothing simple, then, well, actually, if you know, well, actually, well, there is a lot, and you just take it one step at a time, then it's, I think, a lot more hopeful, and you get to where you want a lot faster than if you try and chase shortcuts left, right, and center.
Yeah, we've had that problem. People come up, they think this is so simple, but then to fix that issue, we actually laid out the process step by step and how long it takes and what's going to happen. And when they see the process, they're like, they come to the reality and be like, oh yeah, okay, I thought this would be a 30-minute thing. Turns out it's actually 300 hours for my simple idea.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the thing, but that's sort of fair enough when you think about it, and people, I might do that sort of thing in another area of, of expertise. Like if you don't know, you just have no idea what's possible and what's involved in things.
100%. Speaking of that, what are some of the biggest mistakes that coaches make when it comes to launching or taking their offers and programs online?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I see all the time is, it's kind of like building before they ever talk to somebody and see that positioning, that kind of, and I did some mentoring for Thinkific a couple of years ago, where they had one of those promotions where, basically I got to work with a whole bunch of course creators. And every single time I asked, my first question was, have you sold the thing? Oh no. I have to build it first, right? And then they go and they spend ages like recording videos and like, oh, what's the best video recording software? And they jump into the tech way too early, and they go through all this like, oh, and do I need a green screen? And like, no, you need somebody to buy the thing, right? You need to be clear that because that's the thing, when it's your area of expertise, you're usually the worst judge of what somebody else is looking for and prepared to pay for. You think I mean, I've done it for, like you think what people need to know, but then people go, well, I don't know, so you spend a lot of time trying to like building something that nobody wants. That's, I think, the biggest mistake I see.
For sure. Yeah, before validating, like you mentioned earlier, or before getting a minimum viable product, like before talking to people, I've seen this happen a lot. Like they spend 6 months to a year to 2 years creating a program, spending tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands, on creating something without a single customer, without even consent or anything from anybody. Then they're neck deep into costs and the rest of it. And now they're like, oh, I need customers. And like to your point, the very first point is to find a customer and
exactly
validate. And gang, please hear this: validate by collecting payment.
That's the only validation there is.
That's the only validation that is actually valid. Like I've done this, and I'm guilty of that. I've talked to people. They're like, I'm like, what do you think of this idea? They're like, oh, it's amazing, Mostafa. It's such a brilliant. And I'm like, that's like to my ego. I'm like, yes, I am brilliant. But when I create it and I go out there, I'm like, you want to buy it? They're like, yeah, not right now. I'm busy. Let me talk to my wife. Like to the point of without the payment, you don't have a product.
Absolutely. I've done it.
and a great book on this, gang, is The Lean Startup. Amazing book. Read and take every bit of information in that book about starting up with a lean process that is validated, where you have customers and you the guy, I forgot his name, but it's a great book, The Lean Startup. Let's talk about your gift and what you are sharing with people.
Yeah, I brought a copy of my book, Taming the Tech Monster. So it's really for anybody who, And the subtitle, like I've got, hang on, I don't know, I've got my virtual background, you probably can't see it. You know, it's Taming the Tech Monster. There you see little dragon, because I think he actually says it all. It's what feels like a scary monster is really just a friendly little dragon that wants to play. And the subtitle says how to rise above tech frustration and build your business online with joy and confidence. So it's for anybody who thinks, how on earth does tech and joy and confidence go in the same sentence? Like, if you can't imagine how those two fit together, then the book's for you. And there is you know, a free PDF copy available. It's a quick read, and there's a little dragon everywhere.
Love it. So the link is in the descriptions of the show, and it'll be posted as a comment as well. Get there, download the book, go through it. Anke shares her process on how to tame the tech monster. And this is the tech. It's like, without the proper tech, your business will not grow. Let's just put it that way.
Absolutely.
You're going to stall. You're going to run into problems. You're going to have headaches. And before you know it, you probably get burnt out. So figuring out tech and having proper tech in place is essential to the livelihood of your business and to the growth of your business at the end of the day, right? So the link is there. It is a long link. It's complicated, so I'm not going to try to spell it out, but click on the comments or the show descriptions and you will see it. Let me ask you some personal questions, if that's okay with you.
That's fine with me.
All right. So what is a new thing that you have tried recently?
I've started to learn French just for the pure fun of it.
Learning
And
French.
as an experiment, actually, you know, as I'm always more interested in the methodology of language learning than the actual language. So it's pure fun, but that's how I started learning Spanish, and I ended up in Spain 18 years ago. So you never know where it takes me.
So, I mean, if you know German and Spanish, I think learning French is not going to be that hard. There should be some similarities, right?
A lot, yeah, it's a lot, yeah.
A lot of words.
I learned a word yesterday that actually is like, oh, why does that sound so familiar? It's like, oh, yeah, it's like the Russian word. So I think language learning is like, I'm not really a fan, or I don't really agree with that old saying, like it gets like, you know, you have to be a kid to be good at language learning. I think you need a lot of reference points. The more reference points you have, every language you learn gets easier. So yeah. I'm enjoying my little French now.
I don't believe that either. I mean, if you want to learn something, you'll learn it regardless of how old you are. So love it. Do you have like a specific method on learning a language?
Oh, that's the whole reason for the experiment. I'm always following like what's going on in the language learning world and how that's shaping, because, you know, we all know like how this stuff got taught at school, where you think you spent years and still don't know anything. So there is they've come a long way in the sense that they kind of found what the missing piece was with this whole immersion thing. You know, you just basically just go to the country, it doesn't really work. But so basically they're saying like, how children work, the essence is comprehensible input. So you need to expose yourself to a lot of the language, but you need to understand what it is they're trying to say. So you can either be just outside of the vocabulary you're already familiar with, or you can, you know, people can use drawing or dancing or any other way to make it comprehensible, but it needs to be comprehensible and a lot of repetition. So I'm literally, the experiment is to see like no conscious studying, almost like allow, like get out of the way and let your brain do the work. And it seems to be very effective. So we'll see how it goes. Ask me in 6 months. We'll talk about that.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Learning the new language. I think it's what's the word I'm trying to say? It's like opens up your brain like to new ideas and learning new things and new words. And you've got to be pretty, I think it smartens you up a little bit as well, if not a lot. Like opening up new channels in your mind. Totally. Love it. What are a couple of books that have had a big impact on business or life for you?
The first one that comes to mind is Dr. George Pransky's Relationship Handbook. It's really quite the game changer, because it looks at relationships between people, like not necessarily, obviously that has an impact on your personal relationship, and it also has, it has an impact on your business relationship. It doesn't matter, but it really whacks you around the head quite a bit. Like it really it really challenges everything you've known until then. Like, so from that point of view, it's
Love it.
yeah, that was a really powerful one that keeps coming back for more. So
Do you have another one? Another book that made a good impact on life or business?
Jamie Smart's Clarity. He's got, it comes in a big one, a little book of clarity, but it's all about pretty much how we function as human beings. And so you get a sense for how we operate, and where, why we feel the way we feel and how things work. And that has a massive impact on literally everything we do.
Love it. What's one advice that made a big impact in your life or business?
I think the one thing that just jumps to mind is the advice to be very careful and discerning about who you allow to obligate you with their money.
What was that again?
Be careful who you allow to obligate you with their money.
What do you mean by that?
That means that I shouldn't take on a client just because they want to be served, right? So it's like to just be, okay, the moment I take your money, you have sort of rights onto me. So it basically means like you actually, what made the shift it gave me was when I started my sewing business, I really had this, and that's a story for a whole other day, but like that was my first venture into the business world. And I really had that idea when somebody came to me and say, hey, I want you to make this skirt. It was kind of my obligation or my whole purpose in that business to give them what they'd asked for, right? So now this advice says, well, no, you're not. You actually get to choose who you work with. So you make sure you choose the people you can do your best work for, and not just any old person where you then go and, they don't get the results, you get frustrated, and it all goes downhill from there.
Absolutely. What do you have to say about that to people that are just starting, they're short on cash, they're struggling to pay their bills, someone shows up, is willing to pay, but it's not exactly the best customer that I'm looking for? What would you say to that person?
Well, take it. Like, do it, because the thing is, the only way for you to become discerning about who your best customer is actually work with a few, because the people you think will be your best customer might not be. Like, you're going to need that experience.
Yeah.
So well, maybe you need to kiss. I mean, kissing a few frogs is probably a good thing, because they will teach you more than anybody what you're looking for and who the best fit for you is. So when you're starting out, I think you should take the clients who come. You just don't want to get stuck there.
You will know which type of frogs you like to kiss.
Exactly. You get to choose your frogs.
Maybe there's the small frogs maybe you like it better. You never know.
Yep.
Or big frogs, you never know.
If somebody just tunes in now, what are these two talking about?
Small frogs taste better. If you had a Google or a Facebook ad where everyone around the globe with access to the web could see your ad and your message, what would your message be for people of Earth?
You want to get to the end of your life exhausted with nothing left on the bucket list. Make sure you do. Like, make sure anything that you feel drawn to do, you bloody well do it.
Make sure you exhaust or do everything on your bucket list.
Yeah. Get to the end with an empty bucket list.
On your bucket list. Love it. So you're not like wishing that you would have done this and that you're fully satisfied and you've done everything to your power.
Yeah. There's a brilliant book by an Aussie lady called Bonnie Ware. It's called like the top 5 regrets of the dying. And she was a nurse. Like, she literally talked to people who were at the end of their lives. And the top regret that people said to her were like, oh, I had all these things I wanted to do. all these things I wish I could have done and never got around to doing. And I was like, oh no, I was sort of tearing up because it was literally like, that was my grandma, full on, so she never got to do all the things. And I'm like, I'm not going to live like that. And, I'm going to just do whatever's in my power to, make sure anybody who doesn't want to go like that.
How do you
won't have to.
how do you get someone to change their mindset on that? Like if they're just not enjoying life, they're not doing anything. Is there a way to change their mind, or you just let them be?
I think it's like, just, you can't make somebody stop smoking, right? So it's like they need to have an insight that gets them like, wait, what the hell am I doing here, right? And I think all you can do is live your life to the best, how you want to live it, like to make the impact you want to make. And, if you're lucky, somebody sees you and go, wait, that's much better than what I'm doing. But I don't think we can make somebody else see something.
For sure. I think you could maybe show them, talk to them gently and nicely, and show them examples.
Yeah, you can demonstrate by living. Yeah, right. That's what you can do.
But you cannot force people to. I have a couple of people around me that I'd like to force, but it's just not going to work. I've tried. Like, dude, you got to enjoy your life. They're like, oh, mind your own business.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, until somebody's ready, they're not going to hear it.
Exactly.
And somebody,
But I'm looking for the magic pill to get them ready to start enjoying life, right?
Yeah.
I guess that's maybe another conversation for another day. Anke, this has been an amazing conversation. Is there anything that you want to talk about, but that maybe we didn't get a chance to talk about?
I think it felt really nice and complete, but it feels like there's probably some more conversations in here if we ever wanted to.
Absolutely. Well, we're always welcome. Come back and explore more and talk about tech and how you can help people. Gang, if you're watching or listening, if you have tech problems, do reach out to Anke. You can click on the link in the descriptions of the show or in the comments and download her book, Taming the Tech Monster. I'm pretty sure you can find Anke on Facebook and on LinkedIn and other places. Reach out, send a message, have a conversation with her and see what she could do for you. She's got a beautiful heart, amazing lady. She will help out. I've known her for a few years now, and I cannot say enough good things about her. Thank you for joining us again. As I mentioned in the beginning of the show, if you're interested in my simple retention formula blueprint to show you how to save money on lead generation, tap and into your existing list of customers and prospects and extract the most out of it, type the word retention on a comment below, and we'll send you the link to download the checklist. Thank you for joining us. Have yourself a great day, and we will see you next week.